All right, welcome here, everybody. It's good to be with you on this Thursday afternoon. Bright and sunny outside, and of course the temperatures are warming up, and so we're really looking forward to the next few days at least, because to us it feels like spring is on the way, and so we're really looking forward to that. It is my distinct pleasure this afternoon to be able to sit down and chat with Kevin Hildebrand from the Bunker, and the reason we have Kevin here this afternoon is, of course, as you know, during the course of the pandemic that we've been dealing with, it's been affecting different ministries in our community in different ways. And of course, the Bunker plays a critical role in this community in terms of ministry to our youth. And so we thought it'd be important to get Kevin's perspective on how things have been going, some of the challenges they've been facing. So welcome here, Kevin. It's good to have you with us this afternoon.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy and excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Say, I'm just going to start with this question for Kevin. And of course, Kevin and I were talking just ahead of the broadcast now. And Kevin's got a whole bunch of different perspectives he'd like to share with us this afternoon. So, Kevin, I'd like to start by asking you, the Bunker Ministry, as I imagine many have had to come up with some pretty creative ways of connecting with the youth in this community. What are some of the ways that the Bunker has tried to reach out to the youth in the community, that sort of thing?
Right. Yeah, it has been super challenging.
I don't doubt it.
Everybody assumes that, teenagers these days, they're just 100% hooked on social media. That's
Right.
where they live, that's where they exist, that's how
Right.
they function.
Right.
And you know what? I think that stereotype has gone out the window.
How so?
Kids are fed up. Kids are done with doing school through Teams.
Okay.
Kids are fed up with meeting on Zoom.
Okay.
I think this was a great watershed moment in history,
Okay.
in that this has given kids the opportunity to see what they're missing when all they have is their electronics, and when
Okay.
all they have is this fake social world, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the one takeaway we got from kids early on, like back in spring already.
Mm-hmm.
We did it in spring. We were doing virtual bunker nights.
Right.
We would videotape our evening, and we would do the same typical stuff that we did.
Right.
And kids would watch it for the first 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
Then we had like close-up views of the different volunteers, right? Where we would just be in our homes or wherever we were, and it would be like a day with the volunteer.
Right.
And the kids loved that, right? Because then they could get into our lives and see a little bit about who we were.
Right.
But the big thing is they're like, yeah, wow, this is so cool. I loved seeing that about your life, but I wish I could actually come hang out with you when you're out on the farm doing what you're doing, or when you're in your workshop working on a car, right? It came down to them realizing that, man, we miss the relationship aspect.
Wow.
Even kids, as much as we think they're trapped in this social media community, they want real, legitimate flesh and bone community.
And that's a good point, Kevin, because that's one of the things that, as I look back on, the last few years at least, it just seems to me, and you've identified it, that it seems like a lot of youth are just glued to their devices. And yet what I hear you saying is that in reality, while those devices have certain advantages to them, of course, when it comes to doing real community, this in-person, face-to-face thing, there's nothing to beat it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because there's so much you get from looking a person in the eye, right? Like, I can ask a kid a very in-depth personal question on social media.
Okay.
And I get a response of, yeah, I'm fine. I ask them that same question when I'm looking them in the eye, and I see that little tear form, or just their eyes glaze. And then I know it's like, okay, what do you mean? What's fine? How can we, right?
Let's expand on that.
Yeah. Whereas if they just say, yeah, I'm fine, and you're like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
You type that out, they get frustrated. They get, the communication.
Yeah. I keep thinking too that, like, for example, even here in church, when we're doing emails or whatever else, right? Emails are good for a few things.
Yeah.
But in terms of really getting down to the nitty-gritty of a person's life and really examining, you can't do that on an email.
No.
That takes this in-person thing.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly.
So what are the ways that you've tried to reach out to youth in the community, given the fact that we've basically been in shutdown, lockdown for a while now?
Exactly. Yeah, like as volunteers and as staff, we've got our kids that we connect with and
Okay.
stuff like that. So we maintain contact as
Okay.
much as we can.
Okay.
At Christmas time, we made stockings
Okay.
for each one of our kids,
Wow.
and we delivered them, hand delivered them to each of the kids.
Wow.
So we could at least give them the stocking, and say, hey, it's not much, but it's just to show you that we've been thinking about you, we care about you, and we miss you.
Right. Wow.
Right? And just those few moments of 6 feet interaction,
Yeah.
you know, it meant so much to the kids.
Yeah.
It meant so much to the volunteers and the
No
staff.
doubt.
Like, you know, when we posted it out and said, hey, how many of you volunteers would have time or interest in running around all over the place doing it? Every one of them was like, yes, absolutely, I want to see my kids again.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we did that at Christmas, and then we did it again now just at the end of February.
Wow.
Just, you know, just another, because we were thinking, okay, maybe things in February will open up a little bit, and then beginning of February, they're like, nope, and man, we noticed that in the kids. They're like, we thought we'd be coming back soon. It's like, no, but you know what? We're gonna come see you. We're dropping off stuff.
Wow.
And it's been good for us,
Yes.
right? Because it gives us a purpose. It gives us something to do again. When you take people like us that work in this human social services thing,
Right.
you take away our reason for existing, and it's such a void, it's such a hole.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, like you would think, you know, and the three of us at the Bunker, me, Harold, and Alicia, we've been talking about this. It's like, you know what? You think we're adults, right?
Yeah.
We've got everything put together, but all three of us absolutely, totally, firmly know that we were created and built and designed for youth ministry. And now, through circumstances totally out of our control, that was taken away from us.
Right.
And the void and the emptiness and the feeling of not being worthy, not good, and like, because this is what we do,
Right.
and it's gone.
Right. Now, okay, let me ask you a question along that line. That's something that you and I haven't discussed before the broadcast now. But I'm just kind of wondering, how do some of the youth that you've been talking to, what do they think about God in all of this, or how do they see God relating to this? Have you had any interaction with them on that?
There have been some of the questions, but more along the lines of, you know, like, why isn't God getting rid of this? Right? Like,
Right.
along those lines.
Yes.
You know, that's their main thing.
Yeah.
Another part, and this is the more the unfortunate part, right? Because they'll pull out stuff, they'll be like, hey, so there's this church out somewhere,
Yeah.
right? And they're doing all this stuff. And there are people that they're putting lives at risk, and they're like, if the church is so all loving and all encompassing,
Right.
why? Or is the church really just a building? Because, you know, now, yes, they've been having to shut down, and all these people are complaining they don't have their religion anymore.
Right.
And they come to me and they're like, you always taught us that Christianity isn't confined to the walls of the bunker.
Right.
But so, right, it was things like that.
Yeah.
And
wow. So there's kind of a what I hear you saying is that you know, while, and we talked about this a bit before the broadcast, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but this whole notion that really the church isn't the building, and we know that.
Yeah.
Okay, the church isn't the building, and the church is the people of God. There's no question about that. But there's something about a physical location that helps to give a sense of identity to the group.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know we're identified in Christ, we're secure in Christ, that sort of thing. But there is something about a central gathering place.
Yeah.
Now, if I go back to the Old Testament for a moment, I think that's part of the reason that God set up the tabernacle as He did as Israel was moving across the desert, and even building the temple in Jerusalem. Even though the people of God are identified by their relationship with God in the Old Testament as well, there's something about that tabernacle and that temple as a central meeting point where the people of God can gather and hear their voices together.
Yeah.
You know, that's always a really important part, right?
And that's what we tell them too. It's just like, hey, the same reason you come to the bunker every Friday night, you know, you don't often come and stay for the Bible studies or whatever, right? Sometimes you come in and you're here for 10 minutes, you connect with a few people, you say hi to us, and then you leave, right? But it's that point of community, that point of contact, that point of just, hey, look, I'm still here, you're still here, good. You know, like it's right. It's that feeling like you still have your connection, you have your place in the world. I said that's what it's like for churches too. Right. And but they get wrapped up, right? Because a lot of the kids that we have, they're not believers, or they have been at some point. And they've been burnt by different things.
Pull back,
And so then they come at it from that almost antagonistic perspective, but not so much, because they know we're at the bunker, we're faith-based and Right.
So here's another question that sort of rises out of what you were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, and that has to do with God's place in all of this. You know, like you know, one of the questions you pointed out was, you know, why doesn't God take this away? Well, just very recently I was reading an article on the relationship between faith and doubt. And I'm kind of wondering whether part of the reason that God hasn't allowed this thing to stay as long as it has to do with the fact that there are some complexities about our relationship with God and God's relationship with us that I think the youth need to see us struggle with. Because youth look at us sometimes and they may think, you know, I mean, I'm a pastor, you're a pastor as well, working in the bunker, and they've got it all figured out, right? All the answers are like boom, 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 boom. And then you hit something like this, and you and I are looking at each other and we're asking the same question. You know, God, what are you doing with all of this, right? So we, in essence, we're struggling as the youth are struggling. And so it's okay for them to watch us struggle with trying to figure out those complexities, and sometimes to say, you know, we just got to trust God with this thing.
Because you know what, I totally believe as a North American church, we have become probably a little bit too complacent.
Okay. Expand on that a little bit.
You know, like for us, this is like the worst thing ever that could have happened.
Right.
You know what? But the government has not said you cannot minister anymore.
Right.
They have just said you cannot minister in a large congregation group inside a building.
Right.
They have allowed us to do online virtual stuff. They have allowed us to continue being on social media and being open in talking about our faith. There are several countries in the world where if you even think about saying something religious on social media, you will be targeted, you will be tracked, and you will be hunted down. We're not being hunted down.
No.
We're not really being persecuted.
No. Which is a major point of contention.
Yes, exactly. Right? They have not one point has the government said you can no longer minister and preach the word of God. You just can't do it in this context.
The way you've always liked to do it.
Yep.
And even to a degree, I mean, we have to be honest, even to a degree in terms of the way God would, in some ways, like us to do it. You know that familiar passage in Hebrews, you know, don't forsake your meeting together, as is the habit of some. All right. And I had this conversation with somebody the other day along these lines as well, that if this is the worst issue that Christians face, we've had it pretty easy. In lots of ways. If you think about, like you said, if you think about Christians around the world and some of the things they've had to deal with, just for speaking the name of Jesus, is there anybody that has told us we can't? Now, if somebody tells us that we can't do that, that's a different issue. Then we've got to fight in our hands. All right. But in terms of this, I think it's just forcing us to be creative in ways that we're not used to thinking. And so having to do what we're doing, there's a lot of growth there. I think.
Like I haven't heard of a single virtual church service that has been shut down or fined or even openly attacked by the government, regardless of their stance or what they've been saying.
Well, okay, now along that line, Kevin, of course, just a few minutes ago we were talking about how youth in the community in the area are really craving sort of that person that person-to-person contact and connection, which we all know is really important. And in this time of virtual church, virtual spiritual growth, that sort of thing. Now, just before the broadcast got going, you and I were talking a little bit, or you were talking a little bit about some of the advantages of what the virtual church has done for some of the youth you've been talking to. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Like for us, these online church services have been amazing.
Okay.
Right? Because church as a typical standard Sunday morning in business, in building, in person thing is very, very intimidating for a lot of the kids that we minister to.
Right.
It's intimidating for a lot of adults that are in this community, right? Not everybody feels they're pretty enough, perfect enough, put together enough to attend a church in person. You know, like I've got some kids where Sunday morning, the last thing that's on the top of their priority list is making sure they're showered, their clothes are clean, and you know, that kind of thing. Right. So with these online services, I can talk to my kids, and when we get to a certain topic or a certain whatever it is, an issue that they've got going on, I can refer back to different online services that I've seen and get them to go and even if I just say, hey, start watching at like the 7-minute mark and watch for 10 minutes, right? You'll get some perspective in there. Right. Or if they're curious and they're like, hey, I want to like check out some of this God stuff a little bit. Okay. It's like, hey, you know what? Go check out this pastor because he's really good at some of the basic stuff. Like, they've got a great series going on right now, right? Or this kind of stuff. Right. And like I have sent them to a pastor I know in Calgary and in North Dakota and several here in Winkler with different topics. Okay. And then afterward, I can message them and say, hey, did you watch the video? What are your thoughts? And then sometimes there's some questions. There's some exchange that can happen in there. And they're like, yeah, that was really cool because you know what? They said like, I was actually just sitting downstairs in my pajamas watching. I was in church in my pajamas. Like most of us are these days. Exactly. I said, yeah, that's what I was doing too. I was in my recliner. I got my coffee, my breakfast. I'm listening to the church service. Yeah. Wow. And for me personally, I like it because when I'm listening to a church service, I'm not just listening for what I can get out of it. I'm listening to what I can get to spread to somebody else. Okay. And sometimes, you know, I get those thoughts going and I'm making notes and I'm opening my Bible and I'm reading the passage. It's like, oh, that clicked something, triggered something. And I'm going back, trying to find another one. I go down these rabbit trails and all of a sudden I've got my half page of notes. And if I'm in a regular church service, then I look up and I realize, oh man, he's on point 4 and I just finished 1. Yes. And so now with these online services, I just hit pause and I can spend the next half hour, 45 minutes wrapping my brain around this concept and making notes on, okay, so this is how it affects this kid and this is a point that I have to remind myself to tell this guy about. Okay. So when it comes to these services, what I think I hear you saying, Kevin, is that okay, so let's kind of speculate that, you know, maybe by Easter around that time, you know, churches may open up again to a larger group of people. So are you saying that say even after the church kind of can reformulate itself and get back together, you'd really like to see the virtual church idea, the online services continue? Oh yeah, absolutely. Like this, I think, is one of those things that Christians do really well, right? Okay. You put something in our way and we will figure it out and God will make it even better. Right. I think this is one of those things, right? Where yes, we can look at the inconvenience of being closed and all that, but you know what? This is one of those things where we had nothing left, right? Right. So now it's just God. Right. And He gave us all this technology and He gave us these opportunities. And I think this is just an amazing tool for evangelism. Okay. You know, because it's realistic, right? Like how many people can you physically see in a day, right? As a minister. Right. And this, you're preaching 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You are accessible. Yeah. So what I hear you saying, Kevin, is that
we should never really underestimate these opportunities.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to look at technology and things like that as many times as sort of a mixed blessing, a double-edged sword, if you will.
Yeah.
And we have a tendency sometimes to really focus on the negative side of it. And yet, in terms of a positive impact, what I hear you saying is that you can reach a much larger audience, and you never know when.
Yep.
Okay, so all kinds of things can be going on.
Yep.
Oh,
and when you're reaching someone in their comfort zone, they are much more receptive.
Right.
Right. If a 19-year-old boy shows up here, and he looks down and his shoes aren't clean and polished, and his pants are a little torn, and he has to wear a toque because he didn't wash his hair.
Right.
He's so preoccupied with being uncomfortable that he misses some of the things that he's supposed to be hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, of course he misses the personal side of it.
Right.
But once he gets comfortable with what's being spoken and communicated out of a building, right? Then that's often their first step, where it's like, wow, this Pastor Dale, he speaks some good stuff.
Okay, I hear you.
You know,
I hear you.
And I've seen one service where along the bottom of the thing, they were constantly scrolling. If you would like to contact somebody, here's names and numbers.
Ah.
Right?
Okay.
And so it's almost that.
So connections and contacts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I haven't spoken to any of those pastors to see how many people actually connect with them.
Right.
But
really doesn't matter as long as it's there.
Yeah.
People have a point of contact.
Yeah, because then all of a sudden this 19-year-old kid calls you up in your office and say, hey, so a month ago, you spoke to me on the online service.
Yeah.
And can I meet you for coffee?
Yeah. Wow.
You know, those kind of things can happen. And it's not even a kid, right? There's a lot of adults in this community that don't know Christ to the full level that we know they need to.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting. As you were talking, you know, the idea of a non-threatening environment to be introduced to Christ into, you know, and that's part of the advantage of the virtual service. Yeah. Now, on the other side of that, maybe that's a word of challenge to us as congregations in terms of how we're going to look at things after we're able to get back together. You know, for example, just this last Sunday, Pastor Tim talked about a warm community and what it means to be an inviting community, inviting people in right where they are.
Yep.
And sometimes we have a tendency in churches to have expectations of those that come into worship with us that aren't very realistic, and we set the bar so high that, like you say, unless you're wearing like a suit and a tie or, you know, the right clothing, you don't really feel welcome. And yet the church should be a place where anybody can come. Right?
And you know, for the most part it is.
Okay.
It's just the reality of it is the people don't always feel that way.
I hear you.
Right?
I hear you.
You know, it would kind of be like, you know, if you would walk into Parliament, and you want to sit there and be a part of it, right?
Yes.
Like,
there's rules,
right? Yeah, exactly, right? Yes, they would welcome you because it is a public place, but still, you would always feel like, right?
And there's probably been one of the major advantages and contributions that the Bunker has made to ministry in this community, is the fact that where some of the youth, or maybe many youth, I don't know, maybe they're feeling a little threatened by a church building and what it represents and what, you know, the rules, that sort of thing. And yet here's the Bunker, and the door's open. And anybody can come in. And they feel that non-threatening kind of welcoming environment. And I'm sure that's really contributed to the impact of what the Bunker's done in Winkler over the many years it's been here.
Yeah, and we let them all know, hey, like, we are going to speak about God in here. And we're not going to beat you with a Bible, right? But you know, we sit and we talk to the kids and we tell them stories, and they're like, "Wow, that is so cool! Like, where do you get this from?" Well, it's from Jesus. This is what he said in Matthew, right? And they're like, "That's Bible stuff."
It's like, wow, where'd that come from?
Right, exactly. Right, like you put it in a way that they grasp, that they understand.
Okay. Now, given the fact we've been in lockdown for quite a while. I just was looking at Facebook yesterday, and I noticed that you're able to open up now. And can you tell our audience a little bit about how did that happen?
Yeah, well, it's kind of as the Bunker, we fall into a few different areas,
Okay.
but not completely enough that we're in any one given area.
Right.
Right? Like, what was it, 6 weeks ago when churches could start to have some small services?
Right.
We could open at a 10% level,
Okay.
but because we're not specifically a religious building, we could only have 5 kids in at a time,
Okay.
and we could only like talk to them, right? And for the way our ministry works, a lot of the stuff we do is revolved around food, right?
Right.
Sitting around a table and eating stuff, or we're in a basketball court and we're shooting hoops.
Just that connection.
Yep.
Yep.
Something where the kids are somewhat distracted, right? So they don't have to feel that awkwardness of just me sitting across from them and so you had a really rough week, hey?
It's not a counseling session.
Right, exactly, right? Because that's how they feel, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden they feel like, oh, I'm a project and he's working on me. Whereas if we're in a basketball court and we're shooting hoops, I'm like, hey, so you had a really rough week? And then he's like, yep. And and we talk, or we're shooting pool, or playing video games, or board games, or card games, right? So that is a huge part of how our ministry works.
Okay.
We could not do anything like that. Anything to do where there were like common contact touch points, like if you're playing cards, nope, doesn't work. Pool doesn't work because you're the balls and the cues and basketballs.
Yep.
So we looked at it and we're like, we're not gonna. The kids actually aren't going to be flocking to us just as, especially in a group of 5, right?
Right.
And one-on-one stuff, we'd been doing that before already, right? Like we would order in food and they would sit at the table and I'd sit across from them, and we could at least be doing that, right? In all the socially distanced protocols.
Yeah.
But so that one-on-one we'd been doing before anyway. Opening it up and having 5 kids sitting around trying to share their what's going on, no, that just doesn't work with our kids, right? If we'd be doing a conventional Bible study, sure. But like I said, that's not really where how our focus works. And so now, as soon as fitness places can open up and other things where you can start doing activities together in groups, now we can open up and do our thing, because now that's the zone we work in. Right? We're like a community center.
Yeah. So you what I hear you saying is that you kind of fit a variety of different shoes all at once.
Yeah.
Community center, religious organization, faith-based, that sort of thing. Community services, addiction services, counseling services. Right? There's just and so that was always the big challenge, trying to figure out how can we take these pieces and make it work for something that is actually beneficial for the kids, as opposed to doing something just for the sake of saying we're doing something. Now you guys have been on Facebook announcing this for about a day or so, as I understand. Have you had any reaction from people, like youth? Are they excited about it?
The kids are so excited. Yes.
All right.
And that's a great thing, but it's also a little bit of a concern. Because we still have a 25% limit. Right? So that means we can only have 40 some people in the building. So the way we do it is kids come in, they get a wristband. They sanitize, all that stuff. We take their contact information, and now you're here, right? When we run out of wristbands,
that's it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wow.
So as kids walk out the door and they leave, we ask them, hey, like, are you just going out to have a cigarette or fresh air? Or are you going to be coming back? And if they're like, nope, I'm going home. Perfect. Okay, now we can pull out another wristband. We cut theirs off and we pull out another one, and somebody who's outside without one.
Oh, that's a genius.
Yeah. So that's how, kind of like Canadian Tire did that with their shopping carts, right? When we're at our shopping carts, our building is full.
This is all, folks.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. But so what I hear you saying is you've had a really good reaction to getting together. It's tomorrow night, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. What time is it going to be?
7:30.
7:30.
Yep.
Okay. So what kind of activities do you have planned for tomorrow night as a sort of a kickoff or an opening? What
we're going to do is, we're going to... A big part of it is just letting the kids know how much we miss them. And, of course, we have to go over all the protocols, rules, stuff like that. We'll play the usual games and things like that with the kids. But what we're doing is we're actually having a smash COVID party.
Oh, wow. Explain that a little bit.
We got a couple of piñatas and we decorated them to look like a COVID germ.
No, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
We
outstanding.
fill them with candy and we're going to have the kids smashing a COVID
Really?
piñata for the
Really?
candy and all that. Yeah,
Wow.
just kind of a symbolic little thing for them to,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Maybe churches ought to do that too.
Exactly.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, well, like,
Wow.
Alicia and I, we've been talking about that. And so
Okay.
Harold tried to go, he was going to go get some piñatas today.
Right.
I said, you better hurry up because I said, once we post this on Facebook, I said, I think there's going to be a rush on piñatas.
You can see people walking into church Sunday mornings, piñatas are hanging all over the foyer.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if it's Dora the Explorer or Spider-Man, we'll call it COVID.
It's COVID, just hit it.
Yep,
Wow.
exactly.
Well, that's outstanding.
Yeah,
Kevin.
and so the kids thought, man, that is so good because it's like,
Wow.
this is, yes, we
Wow.
actually want to hit somebody.
Yes. Yes.
I said, yeah, you know what, we all do.
Yeah.
That's why we're just making it a generic term, not
Wall
anything more
punching
specific. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, that's, I'm really glad that you're able to get together again and to continue
Yeah.
to do this. I mean, the community it'll benefit, the kids will benefit. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
us as
incredible.
staff benefit.
And the staff will benefit.
Like, yeah, I've talked to so many youth workers,
Okay.
church workers,
Right.
that have just been more depressed than they ever thought they could be.
Right.
Right? Because
Right.
when you take somebody's passion away from them,
Yes.
I've never lost a physical child, but when you lose something that means so much to you,
Right.
there's that pain and that void and that sense of
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah.
And that's what we've all felt.
It's almost like cutting off an arm or a leg, something, like you said, something really critically important to you,
Yep.
and you lose that part of yourself,
Hmm.
Like,
I've talked to a guy, he owns a restaurant, and him and I sat down across the table and he was crying. He says, I haven't seen my customers in 3 months.
wow.
He said, these aren't just people that supply me with an income.
Right.
These are my friends.
Right.
These are people I care about,
Right.
right? Because running a restaurant is his passion.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just his source of revenue.
Yeah, so for him, it's very personal.
Yep, and that's for us as youth workers, right?
Yeah.
It's personal. If
Yeah.
you as a pastor
Right.
aren't personally connected to it,
Yeah.
you bail out and you
No.
leave. You can work
Yeah.
construction.
It's not just a job.
Yep, youth workers, same thing. If they're not personally connected to it, they don't last very long either.
Right, right.
And so
in my experience in this community is that by and large, by far the majority of the youth workers in this community, regardless if it's in church or Bunker, they're committed to the youth.
Yep.
They want to see youth thrive. They want to see them grow. They want to see them just become who God intended them to be,
Yes.
and just to flourish in that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, okay. In that sense, then, so you guys have been locked down for a while. You're getting back together. How has the bunker been impacted, say, on a donation basis? How have you been surviving? Because ministries need money to run.
Yeah.
Okay, and we know God supplies. I understand that.
Yep.
But how has the bunker been faring from a donation point of view?
Yeah, like our donations took a significant hit last year, mostly because we couldn't do our big fundraisers.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah, you guys always did the pulled pork and
Yeah, like we could do those things. Like we
Okay.
could do our pulled pork meals that
Okay.
we would do outside.
okay,
The health inspector was amazing to work with
Wow.
in helping us navigate that
okay,
and get us going with that.
okay,
That was a huge godsend.
okay.
Like that did really well.
Mhm.
But like, we always did a big spring supper, right?
Okay.
Well, that was something we couldn't do. So
Right.
that was gone. A lot of the businesses that supported us, individuals that supported us,
Right.
they were out of work.
Right.
Or they,
So that is a trickle down.
yeah, has that
Okay.
trickle down effect.
Wow.
But like I said, the things we could do, like with our food service side of things,
Mhm.
that did better than it's ever done.
Mhm.
Because, people wanted to get out and try to have some
Right.
semblance of normal. They
Right.
couldn't go to a festival anymore.
Right.
But hey, we've got a food truck that you can come to every
Wow.
week.
Wow.
So that, it helped make up for some of the loss.
Mhm.
Um,
Now the food truck, is that something, now that we're sort of moving into spring,
Mm-hmm.
warm weather's getting a little warmer outside, Are there thoughts of getting that going again
Yep.
anytime soon? Or?
Yep, end of April.
End of April.
Yep, end of
Okay.
April we're gonna do.
Okay.
The
And
last
we set up at the bunker again
Yep.
in that area, and
Yeah, and what we did last year too, because we had an opportunity,
okay.
we set up on Wednesdays in the industrial park.
Mhm.
This business called
Cool.
Integrity Parts.
Yes.
So we were there on Wednesdays, and
Okay.
then on Thursdays we were at the bunker.
Wow.
So we had it was just one of those opportunities, right? Where it's like, you know what, we got this. Let's give it a shot.
Wow.
And the guys out there loved it
Mhm.
because from where they're at, they're, you know, especially during the COVID thing, it's like, oh man, like we can only do drive-through, we can only do takeout.
Right.
Closest restaurant is McDonald's.
Yeah.
You got a 20-minute wait, right? And so we could be there and they could come to us, and it was,
Wow, that's amazing, Kevin.
yeah, it worked out really good. And we were so blessed.
Okay.
Like the number of people that came and supported us through that.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't totally cover all the things we had
Right.
lost, but you know what? It was enough
It made a
that
dent.
that we can keep going.
Right. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know, Kevin, it's been great talking to you this afternoon. And again, this is something that we didn't go over before the broadcast started, but if you look into the camera and say something to our viewers about the bunker, about ministry, what would it be? If you could sort of sum it up in a word or two. And it's, I know, it's
Yeah.
putting you a bit on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, the big thing and being away from our kids has really solidified that in us. Like our big thing is our personal community, our personal relationship with the kids, right?
Wow.
Like not taking for granted the moments that we have with them, because we have discovered that it can be taken away.
Right.
And it's like that with all of us in everything we do, right?
Right.
You and I, like this, we could be
Yes.
gone.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so yes, just being intentional and take opportunities and take every moment you're given and just go with it.
Fine. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the big
fantastic.
thing, and our volunteers have caught that, right?
Right.
We're all just like, okay, when we come back on Friday,
Mm-hmm.
like yes, we're gonna have to get to know the kids a little bit more,
Yeah, it's a bit of a
but
reintroduction.
we're gonna jump right in, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna start loving
Yeah.
intentionally hard.
Like no
right
holding
away.
back.
Yep, exactly. Because
Okay.
we don't know. We could be shut down next week again.
Who knows, right?
Yep.
Who knows? You know, and that's maybe one of the things as a takeaway from this whole thing that maybe we can encourage and challenge our viewers with is the fact that because the world we live in really doesn't guarantee us either quality or quantity of life.
Yes.
Take advantage of the moments that you have.
Yeah.
You know, don't sort of bank on it to think, you know, a year from now I'll be doing this, that, or the next
Uh-huh.
thing, because you don't know whether you're going to have next year. You don't even know if we're going to have tomorrow.
Yeah.
So let's take advantage of what we got now.
Yeah. Like for me, my dad passed away like that.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been walking across the yard,
Right.
fell down, he was dead. He was gone. There was no chance for me to say goodbye, no chance for me to
Wow.
talk about all these things that we sometimes hang on to and say, yeah, someday we'll deal with that.
Right,
Right.
right.
So I've been in that context for a long time already.
Right.
But now this kind of opportunity, this thing with COVID, like your family member getting sick and all of a sudden they're in the hospital
Right.
and you can't visit.
Exactly.
You can't go to say your last regrets or your
Exactly.
sorries.
Yes.
Don't wait anymore.
Don't
Just
wait.
do it. If you've got something
Yeah.
that you want to say to somebody or that you need to say to somebody or that you should say to somebody, now
Now.
like don't wait.
Right.
Because we don't know.
Wow.
This is just this season we have should have taught us that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, friends, and Kevin, that's a great takeaway. And once again, thanks to Kevin for being here for
Thank you.
for our broadcast this afternoon. We hope you've been blessed by it and challenged. And if you'd like to get in touch with Kevin to either encourage him or the staff at the bunker, please take the opportunity to do that. I'm just going to remind you in closing now that, of course, this Sunday we're going to be opening up the sanctuary once again to a slightly larger group of people. We can now have up to 100 people in. And so if you'd like to register, please call the church office, 204-325-7667, and register. And we still have some room for this coming Sunday. Please let us know that you're coming. We'd love to have you with us. It's been great to be with you this afternoon, and we wish you God's blessings. And just enjoy the day, because it's the day that we have today,
Yes,
right?
you bet.
Excellent. Thanks for being with us, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.